Hi guys, in this video we discuss about Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate is a central hub in Microsoft Azure that help you discover, assess, and migrate on-premises workloads, servers, databases, applications, and VDIs to Azure in a structured and low risk way. And why Azure Migrate? Organizations use Azure Migrate to move on-premises to Azure, reduce migration risk, estimate Azure cost before moving, right size VMs for performance and cost, track migration progress centrally. Azure Migrate pays high level flow. Azure optimize, migrate, assess, discover. Discover, assess, migrate, optimize, and migrate later. First on premises, later discover, assess, migrate, optimize. So it will migrate to Azure. Key components of Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate project, logical container in Azure, stores discovery data, assessment reports, migration status. Region specific does not affect target region. Discover and assess assessment tools, workload, physical, VMware, Hyper-V servers, tools Azure Migrate, discovery and assessment, database SQL, Oracle, MySQL, data migration assistant, web apps, app service migration assistant, VDI, Azure Migrate for VDI, app dependencies, dependency visualization, sorry. Assessment capabilities. Azure Migrate evaluates Azure Readiness, yes or conditional or no, recommended VM size, estimated monthly cost, performance based sizing, storage type recommendation, OS and disk compatibility, supports lift and shift, modernization planning. Migration tools. Server migration most used uses Azure Migrate, server migration based on Azure Site Recovery Engine, supports VMware, Hyper-V, physical servers, other cloud, AWS or GCP, features agentless replication, test migration, cutover with minimal downtime. Database migration, Azure Database Migration Service, DMS, offline and online migration, supports SQL Server to Azure SQL, SQL MI management instance, SQL VM. Oracle is equal Azure. Oracle to Azure VM. MySQL, PostgreSQL. Oracle to Azure MySQL or PostgreSQL. You can migrate. App migration. IaaS, Azure App Services. Java Apps, Azure App Service, AKS. Architecture diagram. App Service, Azure SQL, Azure VMs. First on-premises data center, VMware or Hyper-V, physical servers. Azure Migrate appliance, Azure Migrate project, discovery, assessment, migration tracking, Azure migration tools, and destination, Azure VM platform as a service, VM or platform as a service, Azure VMs, Azure SQL, app service. Step by step server migration example. Step 1, create Azure Migrate project, Azure portal, Azure Migrate, create project. Step 2, deploy Azure Migrate appliance, download OVA or VHD, connect to vCenter, Hyper-V servers. Discover servers. Automatic inventory collects performance data. Step 4, assess, choose region, VM series, pricing model. Review cost and readiness. Step 5, replicate. Enable replication, continuous sync. Step 6, test migration, non-production validation. Step 7, cutover. Planned downtime. Production traffic moves to Azure. Supported migration strategy. Strategy: rehost, lift and shift VM to VM, refactor, minor app changes, re-architect, cloud native, rebuild, redesign, replace, SaaS, retire, decommission. Cost optimization features: right sizing recommendations, reserved instance estimation, hybrid benefit support, disk optimization, standard or premium, like that. Security and compliance: data encrypted in transit, read-only discovery, RBAC controlled, no production impact. Azure Migrate versus Azure Site Recovery. Features: purpose, one time purpose migration. Azure Migrate purpose is migration. Azure Site Recovery purpose is disaster recovery. One time move support, disaster one time move it supports. Azure Migrate is supports. One time move ASR won't support. Ongoing replication, Azure Migrate won't support. Azure Site Recovery will support. Cost estimation, Azure Migrate will support. Azure Site Recovery won't support. Then not to use Azure Migrate. Already cloud native apps, we don't want to use my Azure Migrate. Simple manual VM creation, and that is also not required Azure Migrate. Very small environments, 1 to 2 servers, that is also not required Azure Migrate. Real world use case, company with 100 on-prem VMs. Real world, when we use Azure Migrate, suppose one company have 100 on-prem VMs and discover all servers, identify used VMs, cost saving. From that 100 VMs, we have to identify whichever VMs to be migrated to Azure. So, not using VMs that are not required to migrate. So by that we can save the cost. Migrate 70 VMs, modernize this 20 apps, retire 10 legacy servers. We have to follow like this. So if we have 100 VMs, migrate. So we have suppose we have to decide how many VMs we have to migrate. Here in this example, you can see migrate 70 VMs, modernize 20 apps servers, and retire 10 legacy servers. So in that 100, we have to do like this. Interview questions, quick preparation. What is Azure Migrate? So we have to just explore on it. Difference between Azure Migrate and ASR. What is the difference between Azure Migrate and Azure Site Recovery? What is Azure Migrate appliance? How does Azure Migrate estimate cost? Lift and shift versus modernization. So these are all things we have to explore. Thank you.